Take three questions. Each candidate's going to have 2 minutes each. I'm not going to limit rules on if they want to turn it into a debate, however they want to do it. How they represent their campaigns is how they're going to represent you. Based on what just happened, the two candidates speaking, there was obviously some conflicting ideas. Perfect opportunity to take notes, go home and do your research. So you're voting your well-informed conscience. So, also remember, when I call for people for questions, we will be having a candidate forum in September. Don't burn up the question you want to ask right now if you really want to have it asked in September, because we will not be doing any redos on content. Mike.
My name is Michael Ray Williams. Been in Carver County for 3 years. What I want to know, it's been said that free men do not ask for permission. What are you willing to do to ensure that we remain free men and women and do not have to ask permission of our government?
I think the SEPA bill was a good example of that. And if people don't know, there was a SEPA bill that went the year before that was weak, and I didn't sign on to the bill. And when it came to vote, I actually walked off the floor because I didn't want to fight with my friends who thought that it was a good idea to have a bill with a good title, but the bill didn't do anything. And so I decided to bring SEPA and bring a real bill that said you shall not enforce any new gun laws coming out of Washington, D.C. in Wyoming. And what it did is it actually put it on you have to have teeth in a bill. You can't just say you're not going to do it. And so what it did is it said that you have to do this, and if you do not do what this says, basically do not enforce it, the feds coming to get guns because they passed a new law in Congress, then the police that participate would have to pay no less than $50,000. The agency would have to do that. So that said, I think the biggest thing that you can say about me is I'm consistent. I'll vote against a bill that has a fancy name but does nothing. But then I brought a bill that really did what has to be done. So that's the real key in politics. Will the bill do what it needs to do, or are you killing bills that are going after these same freedoms?
Well, what we need is a fighter in Congress, and I really think that's a key distinction in this race. Who is the true fighter? And I'll admit, sometimes with the words, it's not about words. It's about what you're doing on the floor as a member, as a legislator. And give an example of the distinction. Rather than walk off the floor when there's a tough vote, vote your conscience. That's the way I vote. I don't walk off the floor. Stand up for recorded votes. One day I did 9, which was a record, and they report a protest in the Journal. Keep fighting. When the clerks, he was talking about the clerks defending the clerks, they fought voter ID for 3 years. They caused it to fail. And I wasn't going to take there every time they pulled the sanctimonious thing that it was an attack on them to ask for voter ID. Attack on them. It's the same thing they're saying about the audits, and that Senator Bouchard said in the meeting last week on this sanctimonious thing that we get from the left. And I wasn't going to accept that. I told them I'm going to file this bill every single year. And eventually they came on board. They realized that we needed to get this done, and they appreciated the passion. And they got on board, and we got it done. So what we need is a true legislative fighter, not just a talker, not just Facebook stuff, but someone who has shown that record on the floor of the state legislature or anywhere where there's a track record that's going to transpose to the Congress. So that's what we need.
Thank you, gentlemen. Sheila, you have a question. I know.
So
It's gonna be
you spoke of, we're gonna have to have one candidate to go up against Cheney. How is that gonna happen? I mean, how are you gonna fight to be the candidate? How are you gonna fight to be the candidate? I mean, how is this process going to work?
We started with Senator Bouchard last time, so Senator Gray, if you'd like to field that.
I think there's going to be a clear leader by the end of the year, and I think then I think it'll be clear. And it's disappointing to me that the other candidate in this room that he hasn't committed to looking at that when it does become clear. You know, I think that we do need, it's for our state, and we need to have a consolidation. And it's very important that we do that, because we need to win this race. The eyes of the world are on Wyoming right now, because the Republican Party, our conservative values, are under attack, just as they've been. We talked about since '76, the insiders getting their way. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to turn the tide on what has happened since 2016. Just like they did with Reagan successfully at the end of the 80s. They're trying to take it back. And this is our chance to say, no, we're not gonna allow that. This is the #1 race, and we need to consolidate. And I do think that that the consolidation will be around our campaign. I'm not a defeatist person, but I do believe that consolidation needs to happen. And I think the poll shows that's happening, and I believe in that. Because I don't want Liz Cheney to win. She can't win.
Well, I jumped in the race in January, right after she opened her mouth. I put a team together. I said, we're gonna win this thing. We started raising money right away. Remember, on the other side of people that give money to a campaign, there's somebody who's bought a lottery ticket. This is very important that people understand what grassroots really is. We polled in the beginning of the campaign, and I didn't use one of the fake poll companies. Go look them up, do your research. Go look at who McLaughlin is. Go look at who Remington Polling is. Look at what a push poll is. Look that up yourself. Our polling was done in the beginning, and we released it. And then we did another one in May, right after I had a vicious attack that came after somebody spent a lot of money, because they were worried more about what happened 40 years ago than what's happening now today. And that said, the polling showed us where it needed to be. And it wasn't like one of these push polls. It's an open-ended question. Who do you support? And what do you like about them? It's not, hey, let me mention their name 5 times. Because you'll really see the key on these polls. In my campaign, you'll see an undecided number that's higher. Because they truly aren't ready yet, and they're undecided. When you look at a push poll, you'll see an undecided number that drops way down low because they've said it 5 times on a push poll. Quite frankly, I've told people already, I'm not going anywhere. I've got over 1,000 donors in this state, to where both of my opponents have some little number. I'm running a grassroots campaign. I'm communicating with people. That's how you win campaigns. I don't know why these other guys jumped in. Why are they running against me? That's what's going on here, folks.
But that didn't answer the question, so if when it comes down to one person, then if the,
I'm sorry, Chia,
right,
if they decided not to answer the question that was asked, their 2 minutes are up. One more. Anybody else have a question for the 2 candidates? Austin.
Mine's more of a general question. I'd like to know more about like your character, your upbringing, family, so on and so forth. Just kind of know where you're from, your backgrounds.
So I was actually adopted. I grew up in Newport, Rhode Island as a youngster. And I really learned a lot about the Constitution because of the cobblestone roads and colonial houses. My parents were divorced early. I pretty much had to, school of hard knocks on a lot of things. I think I made a lot of my mistakes when I was younger. I think a lot of people would probably agree with that statement. I don't know what you're really looking for there. So I think I'm an ordinary guy. I was born with a plastic spoon in my mouth. Like so many Americans. My dad was a blue collar worker. I became the same thing. I was a mechanic for most of my life. I learned how to fix things. And I think that's what's wrong with Congress today, is they don't know how to fix things. They know how to break things is all they know how to do. And I don't know how much time I have, almost a minute.
Almost a minute.
I'll tell you what, this will be the only place this story's been told. We had a lightning strike on, everybody know I'm a septic pumper. So we had a lightning strike on the truck, which is pretty bad deal. I mean, we don't have we don't have catastrophic insurance on that truck. It came in the antenna, blew out a hole in the radio, went in the fuse box, jumped around. I mean, you can see the marks. There's marks on the tires where it went to the ground. And, I mean, my wife is panicked, of course, and so many people around me are panicked. They're going, how are you gonna fix this? And I said, well, I'm just gonna roll up my sleeves and we're gonna get at it. And fortunately, I've spent most of my life fixing things, and I was a mechanic, and both systems work similarly. Anyway, fixed it, ECM, put a new computer on that truck, done in a couple days.
Representative Good.
Well, thank you. Yes, I also came from a divorced family. My dad built businesses an entire life. So he lived out here in a radio business starting in the early '90s. I spent some time with him, and then also some time with my mom. I came from a divorced family, and when I graduated college, the business was in trouble. So I helped take it over and do work at the business, and I believe in small business. I mean, that's what I've done my entire life. I've seen the attacks on small business from the left, from the insiders, and that's my background. I did want to respond to a couple of those points in the last question. There was no push-pull for my campaign. I think it's more characterizing what came out of the other campaign. I encourage you to do your research. John McLaughlin, who ran our poll, is the president's pollster, and the questions have all been released. There was no push-pull element in our poll, and that's more characterizing the other candidates' poll, actually. And this whole notion of the idea that the first candidate in the race should be the winner. I mean, if that applied to 2016, Mitt Romney would have. Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush would have won. This whole idea that the first person out of the race. I mean, so in Barrasso in 2024, is someone supposed to announce in 2016, like 8 years in advance, if someone is interested in taking on a senator 6 years down the line? Or are they supposed to announce 5 years in advance? So this notion that the first person out of the gate is supposed to have this clear way without any talking about the issues and anybody else getting in is not supposed to be legitimate is really, I just think that's wrong-handed. The other thing I'd say is please look at the cash on hand in this race. Talks about the grassroots donors, the burn with the strategy that it's different strategies between different campaigns. There's a reason we have a higher cash on hand. And when you're burning 70% on every single 70 cents on every donation, you're not gonna have a lot of cash. And I come from small business where that's you want to have a good cash flow and to run a good campaign, and that's what I think we're trying to do to get this to the finish line. Thank you.
So I want to thank the candidates for coming. We look forward to seeing both of you at our forum in September. I'm sure both candidates are going to hang around. I know they